have 60 minutes, 1 hour for discussion, and I have actually 4 gentlemen joining me. Maybe, yeah, you can, Michael, go start from the end. Yeah. To save time, what I'm going to do is ask each of the gentlemen to take 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and maybe you could actually say a few words about your point of view about maybe innovation or the next frontier, what we are calling about industrial internet. And with that, maybe could we start with you, Michael, at the end?
Thank you.
Please.
Hey, I've been at MIT at the Sloan School, which is a business school, for over 25 years. And before I even do that, I have to thank you all for this conference. I've been to, now you know I've been in academia at least 25 years. It's actually more like 35. But I have rarely been to a conference where I have learned so much new. And it's really amazing, not only from the sessions, but from all the people, the really knowledgeable people next door. And so I really think it's a great gathering of information. With that, I also need to mention I've been at MIT for 25 years. I've done work in everything from distributed systems to financial risk management to software maintenance, lean maintenance and manufacturing. Done work in hospital automation. I've done work in insurgencies and state stability. We have a new center called IC3 in cybersecurity. And I've done all that in the last 6 months. Previous to that, I did some other things. We've been working on that. And at the Sloan School, the perspective is around strategy, modeling, management, and so on. Now to comment a little bit on the Internet of Things, the first thing I'm spent a lot of time trying to understand the environment here, because my background is not industrial control systems, I'll admit it right away, but I learned so much here about it. And one of the first things I learned about your organizations, let me have a show of hands just for a second. How many of you have plants where there is a sign somewhere that says how many days since a safety incident or since an accident? Let me see a show of hands. So pretty broad, pretty across the road. How many of you have signs that say the number of days since a cyber breach or a cyber incident? Let's see, I gotta take a little time to count. No, so it's not a surprise. But from a perspective of Internet of Things and from a perspective of starting to integrate your systems and move things together from the individual factory, which may be isolated and now connected, why not? Why not? Now, I know all the negative side, we don't want to publicize it, we want to do it, but you didn't want to publicize your accidents either, did you? So my first thought is that this integration process, and I worked in distributed systems, is really my background in correctness conditions and why things work and why things don't work in a distributed environment. One of my first thoughts about this distributed environment, all the discussion we've had about cybersecurity, is why not move that up from the local environment and keep track of it and do that all the way up with this type of acknowledgement. Very simple thing, but I wonder if it might have an impact.
So first of all, thank you as well. I think that was a great opening. We're thrilled to be here. My name is Mike Troiano. I'm with AT&T, and I'm responsible for AT&T's Industrial IoT Solutions Organization. And you say, well, what is that and why is AT&T doing industrial IoT? We've actually been on the journey for over a dozen years. In fact, many of the customers that got us here, and that's really on the backs of the U.S. alarm industry foremost, you think about connecting security panels into your home or your business. Back about a dozen years ago when they came to AT&T, this was really around how do I have wireless as backup to the alarm panel going into the house? And a few years later, the alarm industry came back to us and they said, you know what? Kids are coming out of college and they're never getting a primary phone line into the home. And so wireless needs to become robust enough, secure enough, scalable enough to actually support those solutions. And I'm proud to say we have well over 6 million alarm panels that are monitored each and every day in the United States on the AT&T network. But that journey of scaling the platforms over the last number of years really took us in a totally different direction in the sense that more and more industrial companies were coming to us and saying, okay, if these platforms are good enough, we need help to build solutions because there aren't enough point solutions that exist for exactly what we need. We need some custom type things built. And oh, by the way, we want this done so it can connect across Ethernet, cellular, satellite, Wi-Fi. And in many cases, we need this to work in 200 plus countries around the world. And so we've done that. In fact, GE is a great example where AT&T and GE in particular are partnering. You think about the jet engines that were on that earlier series of slides. Wherever that jet engine lands, they need access to those machines. And so AT&T and GE and others are taking those problems back into our foundry, which is a lab environment, to actually build those solutions and help companies realize their industrial vision.
Yeah, my name is Reinhold Achatz. I work for ThyssenKrupp, and not everybody of you may be familiar with the scope of ThyssenKrupp, so I'll give you a short introduction on that. I think many people know ThyssenKrupp as a steel company, but in the meantime, only 30% of our business is steel, 70% is technology. And when we're talking about technology, it's automotive components. So if you're riding a car, and I'm sure you do, you have a good chance to have ThyssenKrupp components in your car. Another good business of us is elevator business, and a good market is America. So I think I'm 100% sure that you rode already a ThyssenKrupp elevator or an escalator, or used a ThyssenKrupp boarding bridge to go on board of an airplane. Another business we're doing is industrial solutions, and we are engineering plants, automotive plants, chemical plants. In the moment, we have a number of very good activities in the US on building fertilizer plants. And we're doing material services, and material services is basically selling all kinds of materials, but as well working on a supply chain. So we have good customers. So we're doing, for example, material supply chain for a company called Boeing in the US. So if you go in an airplane, there's a good chance that at least we support it in some way, the building of the airplane. And as well as earlier, we do steel. And in this company, I'm responsible for technology, innovation, and sustainability. And I believe it's a very good combination because we believe there is no innovation anymore without thinking about sustainability. And there's no sustainability without innovation. And my definition of sustainability is that we on one hand have to be profitable, because if you're not profitable, you're no longer around. We have to have social aspects in mind, because if our products or solutions not accepted by people, nobody will buy it. And we have to take care of the environment. So sustainability is, in my point of view, a very broad definition. And what we're doing basically, and why I'm here, is basically I work as well on the platform Industry 4.0 in Germany. And what we are trying to do is really to make it happen. I think there are many discussions about what needs to be developed, what about security, and I agree, and it's all the concerns I'm having in mind. But I think my messages I always try to give to my people, and I definitely would like to give here today, is basically just do it, just implement it. And Internet of Things is one element of it. It's not everything. I think it is product lifecycle management. It's basically connecting people with devices and all those things. So it's a very broad thing. It's predictive analytics, as you mentioned it as well. So it's basically making our companies a digital company. And that's what we intend to do in ThyssenKrupp. So we have a program started which basically says ThyssenKrupp has to become a digital company within the next 10 years. And I think this is a very ambitious activity because obviously ThyssenKrupp is a pretty broad and international company. But I think it's worthwhile doing it because it creates a lot of benefits for the company as well, and definitely as well for our customers.
Thank you. My name is Steckenreiter, working for Biotechnology Services. Biotechnology Services is the technology company in Bayer. We support Bayer with technologies regarding process development, regarding all these new things are coming up with how to network, how to improve supply chain, how to connect factories to each other. So we're developing solutions for further improvement of manufacturing. Let me say a word to Bayer. Bayer is a word maybe you know from the aspirin. So it's a pharmaceutical company, it's a life science company. Today we changed strongly to a life science company. And what we observe there is coming from a world scale producing chemicals or plastics company to a modern life science company means develop molecules supporting people health, animal health, supporting the crop science business, means supporting different things on people, illnesses, sicknesses, and so on. And what internet brought in that, and that is everything we're using. You're using your mobile phone to check your heartbeat, to check your blood pressure and such things. What coming up with these technologies is that medicine getting very, very personalized in the future. Also farmers, how to bring up your, to protect your plants means you need dedicated solutions, dedicated applications depending on the area, on humidity, so weather protection is an issue. So all these big data things are coming now in our business, and we really faced with a situation that our products needs to be more and more personalized. That means coming back to the production, we coming to smaller lots and more lots. And that is a huge change in the chemical industry in case of coming from this world scale production to a very flexible, modularized production environment. And that is a trend we are really faced with, and where we have to find solution. And there's another big question regarding the supply chain and the distribution. What is the role of these big data companies? Is this in future a core competency of a producer, or is these are the Googles of the world which are coming in and replace parts of our supply chains? These are things where we do not have an answer today, where we work on, where we think on what is our role, what is the role of typical digital or software companies in that environment, and maybe we find in that discussion here some answers on that and more ideas.
Excellent. I want to start with the two, I think, very important concepts Stephan introduced in his presentation. One is the App Store. You know, GE, as he said, is building their own App Store. And I think the second one is the DMC. You know, how all external applications can interface with this App Store. And I think, as Stephan mentioned, in fact, there is a government grant to build a advanced manufacturing center in Chicago. And their, I guess, charter is to develop this DMC. Yeah. And so maybe you could actually tell us a little bit more about when do you think GE will have an App Store ready, or when do you think we will have this DMC, the interface connector, you know, available? And then I would like to ask, you know, other panel members, you know, if you have something similar, or is there something similar being developed in Europe and so forth? Could you start with that, Stephan?
So the DMDII in Chicago you mentioned is it's one of these national manufacturing institutes that is being stood up by the federal government. This particular one, I think the federal grant is about $70 million over 5 years. That gets complemented by about $250 million from companies, universities, states, cities, and so forth that all contribute to that particular institute. I just signed the membership agreement, so we're starting basically today. We think the DMC that will be developed, we'll do that together with them as a project that sort of like continues from a DARPA contract we did for about 5 years. And we think next year we'll have the first platform out there that people could test. We'll also put applications on that from DARPA that they'll make available to us so that we can try how that external app store could possibly work. So I would say prototype, my guess is the beginning of 2016, I would think. Check it out, see if you like it, see if you're interested in participating there as well. If not, you know, it's your money. You're a taxpayer. You're entitled to look at what they're doing and ask. You cannot influence it if you're not a member, but you can watch. So I think it's an interesting way of shortening the time it takes to get innovation into companies. And I think it's an interesting way for suppliers to get exposed to a much larger audience than they otherwise would. Is it going to work? I don't know. It's a research thing, Andy, so we'll see. But I think it's something worth trying.
We definitely need something like this. I think if we could have something like this, that would be terrific for everybody, for the industry. Well, let me maybe ask Reinhold, is there anything like this in Europe?
I think what we are doing, obviously we have research organizations like Fraunhofer and Max Planck in Europe, and they're basically doing pretty much the same thing. And some of them, by the way, have US locations as well. But when I talk about ThyssenKrupp, I think I'm talking about apps. And so we already offer apps, for example, for our customers, where customers can calculate what kind of steel products they would like to use. They can calculate basically the CO2 footprint of it, which is created for automotive industry, for example. So those are apps which are available. But I think we have to be careful when we talk about those things, because we always have to think about what kind of value are we creating for our customers. So from my point of view, it's not only about technology. And as I said in my introduction, I believe that most of the technologies we need are available today. It's more about how can we create value for our customer with those technologies. And the question I always have is when I say we will become a digital company, my people asking me why. And the clear answer is we only do it if it really makes us more efficient and we can create more value for the customer. So that is exactly the driver.
Mike, I was going to ask you, I'm sure AT&T has an app store or some sort, or maybe also, what's your view of the App Store and also DMC?
I actually want to build on both points. And so, first of all, I think there's a general recognition that you can't go it alone. You need partners. This is very complex. One of the criticisms we get often is it's very fragmented, especially as you look at deploying global solutions. It's one of the reasons, actually, about a year plus ago, IBM, GE, Cisco, Intel, AT&T, and a bunch of other companies started to build a group called the Industrial Internet Consortium. And there's an angle on it relative to technology, okay? But to your point, the question we see 9 times out of 10, and one thing I say to customers is, we'll figure out the technology 90% of the time, but if you don't understand how it impacts the business results, and you don't think through business practices, I'll tell you, of the last, I would say, 6 months, 70+% of the meetings I've been in with corporations, it wasn't led by the CIO or even the CTO. The CEO was in those conversations, or the chief operating officer, or even in some cases, chief marketing officer. And so they're looking at it from a very different lens, because what many of them will tell you is that they're very concerned if they don't start this journey now, and it's to your point about getting started, if they don't start the journey now, they may wake up in 2 or 3 years and realize someone moved their cheese. There's one big industrial company that's actually here in the room. I happen to be with their vice president of marketing not too long ago, and she said to me, for 100 years we built X, but she said, in the next 5 years, we're going to be a dramatically different company, and it's almost like the first 100 years go out the window, because I know the technology is going to start to really transform our company. The question is, though, what are we going to be in the next 5 years? And so it's the business angle that more and more people are trying to get their head wrapped around.
Excellent. Let me see if there are any questions out there. Please raise your hands if you have questions. Do you have any questions out there?
I have a comment, just a quick comment on the last, and a question. I'll get started if you don't mind. First, I get to speak from an academic point of view in some ways. We've had a lot of research at MIT, have been involved on both platforms and APIs and their adoption and so on. There are lots of different angles and important things. We've looked at simulating adoption and so on, and I suggest we discuss that afterwards. But one thing that I found very interesting, I do a lot of work with vulnerability markets and the availability of 0 days, and which is really at the problem end of at the very end of the cybersecurity spectrum. And it is amazing to me to think about the difference between platforms and distributed software. People like Facebook, LinkedIn, they get a 0 day, they get a vulnerability, it's patched like that. Snap your fingers and it's patched. Okay, it's done. The average day, depending on which article you read for distributed software, between discovery and a vulnerability and patching is 150 days and sometimes never. So in the type of environment that control systems live in, it seems to me very important to consider the difference between platforms and the ability to maintain them and distributed applications and the ability to maintain those. Just from the basic, very end of the cybersecurity spectrum. There are lots of other business reasons and so on and so forth, but that idea comes to mind immediately, and I just don't know if there's thoughts about that when you're developing these types of environments. We have a
Excellent. Go ahead, Thomas.
May I answer on one of the two topics? One of the on the apps with the German NAMUR, that is the Automation Association in the chemical industry. We're supporting strongly this Industry 4.0 initiatives, and we have started some research programs regarding collecting data from manufacturing regarding pump reliability or availability of different functions of different assets in the manufacturing. This is a shared R&D program we are doing, and the idea is really to develop apps to support engineers to have a better reliability regarding preventing actions and predictive maintenance. And there's a second program we have started together with Fraunhofer, which is mentioned from you before, how we can develop safe software. To really make a software free of viruses, free of Troianos, free of spy software. So and there's a very generic approach, what we can do to support the engineers if they are writing software, because the future depends on develop own software supporting your activities. So how to make a software secure. So that is an ongoing work. We have not the final versions, the final tasks on that, but we believe it is possible to generate a secure environment, but it needs some research activities and really then strong rules for the engineers which are developing software to following the rules that the software is secure in future.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what we have to do is we have to separate those issues a little between industrial internet or Internet of Things or Industry 4.0 and cybersecurity. Because from my point of view, there is no implementation of Industry 4.0 without cybersecurity. But I think what I believe is we have to do it anyway. Yeah. So I think it's not we are not doing working on cybersecurity because we would like to implement a distributed system, which we have since many years.
Many years, yeah.
I think we have to, rule number one is basically we have to have cybersecurity. It's a must. It's not a discussion. It has to happen, and we are spending a lot of effort in doing it. But in addition, obviously, we can leverage all those benefits of Industry 4.0 when we did our homework. So homework has to be done, and then we can implement all those nice features, things which create benefit for us and for the company.
Well, and I think that's where the platform is so critical, right? Because if you have developed a generic platform, it has to come with the cybersecurity. It has to come with certain functionality you can just take advantage of, email functionality. I'm sure all of you have done this at AT&T in particular. I'm sure all of your platforms are basically, they have a basic functionality and then you build on top. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful concept.
Yeah. Excellent discussion here. What I really want to build is, I think it came in a couple of your comments, is many companies, I think right now, challenges, they're trying to figure out how do they get started. I think that's the kind of big question. And do you have any advice? How should companies, how does the CEO get started? And maybe could I start with you, Stephan? GE obviously started.
Yeah, so
what should companies do?
So, first of all, I think it depends on the size, right? So, GE has, I think somebody counted in like 2010 or so that GE was the 7th largest software company, even though nobody ever would have thought of GE as a software company, right? But we were providing all these services to our customers, asset management and whatnot. And as you said, it's all about customer solutions. You have to make it work for your customers. That's what we do. In fact, that's what we do in research. We get paid by the businesses. If we don't bring value to the customers, there's no project. So the large companies have already started. They have their own software division. They're figuring this out, and they have also figured out that they can't go it alone. Right, so hence all these consortia, 4.0, Industrial Internet Consortium, and so forth. So for large companies, if you haven't started, it's pretty late. You better start. And look at what other people are doing, learn from those consortiums, join those, see what you can leverage from there. But one of the goals of these consortiums, especially the ones the federal government is standing up, is to integrate the small, medium enterprises, because they are afraid that those are going to go away, right? US wages are still higher than other companies. How do we make sure that we're gonna keep at least some of these advanced manufacturing jobs and don't add to the number of manufacturing jobs that are already lost? So I think you're running in open doors if you're trying to figure this out using help from the government, as funny as that may sound. So take advantage of that, go to national labs, they're helping. So I would try to leverage the ecosystem in that space the best I could if I need to get started. Steal their strategies and copy them.
Mike, how are you helping companies get started?
In a number of different ways, but I mentioned in my opening remarks this concept of the foundry, and think of it as similar to what GE has done. We have a lab environment that we built out about 3 years ago. We have a center in Silicon Valley, one in Atlanta that focuses more on the digital connected home and connected car. We have one in Israel that's mostly around security and back-end infrastructure. And then in Dallas, right outside of Dallas, we have one that just focuses on IoT solutions. And the concept here is we're bringing the best of the ecosystem, the best of AT&T, and in many cases the best from our enterprise customers into an environment. And this is really around, let's figure out the problem statement. We'll do an ideation, a couple of days of ideation, and then we'll sprint to a conclusion. In fact, last week if any of you were at Distributech or follow utilities industry, there was a press release between AT&T and GE around a next generation smart grid meter GE is bringing to market in the second half of this year, as well as an industrial lighting solution GE is bringing to market. Elements of those solutions actually started in our foundry, where we brought the best of GE, best of the ecosystem, best of AT&T together to say, let's figure out how we build those communication products that can last in the environment 10 to 15 plus years out in the market. We have another example. Speaking of, you brought up supply chain solutions. We have a company literally coming in next week for 2 days of ideation, and to force the conversation, their CEO is coming back to our foundry in 30 days. And what he challenged our team and his team to do was, in the next 30 days, show me a proof of concept that I can get to market with in the second part of the year. And so, again, it's challenging the organizations to come back with a deadline to actually produce something that, again, could be brought to market quickly.
Reinhold, how did you get started, and any advice for others?
I think when you want to start something, there has to be a reason. And basically, what I believe is, again, it's not about technology, it's basically about solving a problem. And so what I ask my colleagues in the moment when you say, how do we want to introduce Industry 4.0 and digital technology, we basically say, what is your biggest problem? What kind of problem you want to get solved? And then I think about and discuss with them, how can we use the new technology to solve the problem? And I give you a very simple example. I think we have a very nice factory in a very nice area in the Sauerland in Germany. It's a factory in a very narrow valley, and buildings on both sides of basically the factory. And obviously we wanted to increase our throughput, and we wanted to produce more. But obviously physically extension of the factory was not possible. The only thing was to make it more efficient, to make the throughput higher. So we discussed an Internet of Things solution and a connected solution where we basically optimized the supply chain for those by connecting our customers and by connecting our suppliers through internet with the factory, that basically the goods, the material, the slabs, and then the coils, which are produced there, are only a very, very short time in the factory. That basically the raw materials, the slabs, are delivered to the factory. We always track them while they are delivered. We know exactly where they are. They're immediately going into manufacturing. They're going out of manufacturing. And as we are very well synchronized with the customer immediately gets it shipped. So we basically were able to increase throughput dramatically without extending the physical layout of the factory. And I think this was very important. And this is really solving a problem. And those kinds of problems we are looking for, that's exactly what's necessary to get started, to get implemented. So it's about solving a problem.
Yeah. Thomas, just one second. Do you have any?
Yeah, I want to provoke a little bit on that, because even if you are not aware on it, you are deeply in. Because every day where you're buying a machine today in the manufacturing area, it has an access maybe to the internet, and your supplier is collecting data. So that is one of the scenarios where I observe in the chemical industry. But the main question is really, and I can only really support what you guys said, is you have to start to somehow, and then you will be surprised that you are deeply in the digital world. You arrived in the digital world, and the only thing what you can do is really define your targets, define the role of your customer, the role of your own supply chain, and really define people and develop the skills to manage these things in the future, because otherwise you will be managed from others because of the Ethernet, of the internet and the global networks which are still active. And the only thing I can really say is, if you have not started, you should really start very fast to define your digital strategy in your company, announce it, maybe a digital officer or digital department which define your role in that network, because it's still acting.